In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless velvet canvas, humanity had finally reached beyond its cradle. Earth's fleet stretched into uncharted territories, seeking resources and allies among alien races that were as varied as they were enigmatic. It was during one such expedition that Captain Ronan Drake found himself face to face with something he could never have imagined, a queen from another world who would challenge everything he thought about life, morality, and even love. Ronan was no ordinary soldier. He wasn't born to lead armies or conquer worlds. His journey began in a small coastal town on Earth, where fishing boats bobbed lazily in the morning tide. But fate had other plans for him. When war broke out between humans and a coalition of hostile alien species known collectively as the Syndicate, Ronan traded his nets for armor and became part of the Interstellar Defense Corps, IDC. Known for his quick thinking and unshakable sense of justice, he rose through the ranks faster than anyone expected. Yet, despite his accomplishments, Ronan remained humble, a trait rare among soldiers who often let power go to their heads. His latest mission brought him to the planet Zytherion, a desolate yet strangely beautiful world cloaked in perpetual twilight. The atmosphere shimmered with hues of purple and gold, giving the landscape an almost dreamlike quality. However, beneath this ethereal beauty lay danger. Zytherion was home to the Velari, a race feared across the galaxy not just for their advanced technology but also for their ruthlessness. Among them stood their leader, the alien queen Zanara. Zanara was unlike anything Ronan had ever encountered. Towering over most beings at nearly 12 feet tall, her sleek, obsidian-black exoskeleton gleamed under Zytherion's dim sun. Her eyes, large and multifaceted like polished gemstones, seemed to pierce straight through him, reading every thought before it formed. Long tendrils cascaded down her back, shimmering faintly with bioluminescent patterns that shifted depending on her mood. Despite her intimidating appearance, there was an undeniable grace to her movements, as if she were more dancer than warrior. The first encounter between Ronan and Zanara occurred by accident, or perhaps fate. While scouting for potential weak points in the Velari defenses, Ronan stumbled upon what appeared to be an abandoned outpost. As he cautiously entered the structure, he realized too late that it was a trap. Before he could react, energy fields sprang up around him, immobilizing him completely. That was when Zanara emerged from the shadows, flanked by two heavily armed guards. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply stared at each other, sizing one another up. Zanara broke the silence first, her voice resonating deeply, rich with authority. "You are far from your kind, human," she said, tilting her head slightly as though studying an exotic creature. "Why do you trespass here?" Ronan swallowed hard but managed to keep his tone steady. "I'm looking for answers, and maybe peace." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Curiosity? Amusement? Peace? She echoed softly, as though testing the word. Then, without warning, she dismissed her guards with a wave of her hand. Once they were alone, she stepped closer, towering above him. "Tell me, human, do you think I am a monster?" The question caught Ronan off guard. He hadn't expected philosophy from someone so obviously powerful and dangerous. For a moment, all he could do was blink up at her, searching for some kind of hidden meaning behind her words. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he replied, "A monster? No. You're just different." Different wasn't quite the right word, but it seemed safer than trying to unpack the complexity of Zanara's existence in front of her. To his surprise, however, her reaction wasn't anger or disdain, it was intrigue. A soft shimmer rippled across her bioluminescent tendrils, signaling something akin to amusement. And then, to his utter astonishment, she laughed. It was a sound unlike any Ronan had ever heard before, deep, melodic, and utterly disarming. The tension in the room dissolved instantly, replaced by something lighter, almost playful. "Different," she repeated, her laughter fading into a thoughtful murmur. "An interesting choice of words." She leaned back slightly, crossing her arms over her chest. "And yet, you fight my people. Does that not make you the monster?" Now it was Ronan's turn to feel cornered. His initial instinct was to defend himself, to argue that humanity had been forced into conflict because of the Velari's aggression. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Zanara looked at him, not with hatred or contempt, but with genuine curiosity. Or maybe it was the realization that, deep down, she was right. War turned everyone into monsters eventually. I suppose we both have blood on our hands, he admitted quietly, lowering his gaze. But I don't believe either of us is truly evil. We're just doing what we think is necessary. Zenara tilted her head again, considering his words. There was a long pause before she responded, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. Necessity, she mused. Such a fragile concept, isn't it? What one deems necessary can seem monstrous to another. Before Ronan could respond, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Both of them turned toward the source of the disturbance. A massive explosion in the distance, lighting up the horizon with fiery orange and red hues. Without hesitation, Zenara activated a holographic display projected from her wrist, revealing swarms of incoming human ships descending upon the planet. They've come for you, she stated flatly, her earlier warmth replaced by cold pragmatism. Your people betray your attempt at diplomacy. Ronan clenched his fists, frustration boiling inside him. They don't understand. This doesn't have to end in violence. And yet, here we are, Zenara countered sharply. Tell me, human, if I let you leave now, will you stop them? Can you stop them? Her questions hung heavy in the air, each one cutting deeper than the last. Ronan knew the truth. Even if he tried to reason with his superiors, they wouldn't listen. They saw only enemies, not individuals. And Zenara, for all her intelligence and charisma, was still the face of the enemy. I don't know, he admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. But I'll try. To his surprise, Zenara didn't dismiss him outright. Instead, she studied him intently, her multifaceted eyes narrowing slightly. Very well, she said after a moment. Prove yourself, human. Show me that your desire for peace is more than empty words. With that, she deactivated the energy field holding him captive, allowing him to move freely once again. Ronan hesitated, unsure whether to trust her sudden generosity. But when she gestured toward the exit, he realized he had no choice. If he wanted to prevent further bloodshed, he needed to act quickly. As Ronan sprinted back toward the battlefield, dodging blasts and debris along the way, he couldn't shake the image of Zenara from his mind. She wasn't what he'd expected, not a mindless tyrant bent on destruction, but a complex being struggling to protect her people while grappling with her own doubts. In many ways, she reminded him of himself. When he finally reached the command center, chaos reigned supreme. Officers shouted orders, pilots scrambled to their ships, and engineers worked frantically to repair damaged equipment. Amidst the pandemonium, Ronan sought out Commander Selene Vega, the woman in charge of the operation. She was a formidable figure, with sharp features and an even sharper tongue, but Ronan respected her tactical brilliance. "Commander," he called out, pushing past a group of technicians. "We need to stand down." Vega spun around, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "Stand down? Have you lost your mind, Drake? The Velari are mobilizing their forces. We can't afford to hesitate." "It's not hesitation," Ronan insisted, stepping closer so only she could hear. "I met their queen, Commander. She's willing to negotiate. If we attack now, we'll lose any chance at peace." For a moment, Vega simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she shook her head. "You're asking me to gamble the lives of my crew on the word of an alien queen. An enemy." "She's not just an enemy," Ronan shot back, his voice rising despite himself. "She's intelligent, strategic, and—" "Enough," Vega snapped, cutting him off. "This isn't about personalities, Drake. It's about survival. Now get back to your post before I relieve you of duty." Defeated but unwilling to give up, Ronan retreated to the edge of the battlefield, watching as human ships clashed with Velari vessels in a dazzling display of firepower. Explosions lit up the sky, casting eerie shadows across the terrain. Each blast sent shockwaves rippling through the air, shaking the very ground beneath his feet. Then, amidst the chaos, something extraordinary happened. From the direction of the Velari stronghold, a single ship emerged, gliding smoothly through the carnage. Its sleek design was unmistakably Zenara's, adorned with intricate patterns that pulsed rhythmically with light. As it approached, a transmission crackled over the comms. "This is Queen Zenara," came her voice, calm and commanding. "Cease fire immediately, or I will unleash weapons you cannot comprehend." The audacity of her declaration silenced the battlefield momentarily. Pilots froze mid-maneuver, commanders paused mid-order, and even Vega seemed momentarily stunned. But just as quickly, the skepticism returned. "You think we're afraid of your threats?" Vega barked into the comm, "We've faced worse than you." Zenara's response was immediate and chilling. With a flash of blinding light, several human ships suddenly went dark, their systems fried by some unseen force. Panic erupted among the fleet as pilots scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. One by one, the remaining ships fell victim to the same mysterious attack. Back on the ground, Ronan watched in horror as his comrades struggled against an invisible foe. He knew Zenara wasn't bluffing. She had the means to wipe them out entirely if she chose. But instead of delivering the final blow, she addressed them once more. "I do not wish to destroy you," she said, her tone softening slightly. "But neither will I allow my people to be slaughtered. Choose wisely, humans. Will you continue this futile war, or will you accept my offer of peace?" The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then, slowly, Vega lowered her weapon, her shoulders slumping in reluctant surrender. "Stand down," she ordered, her voice barely audible over the static. "All units, stand down." As the fighting ceased and the dust settled, Ronan couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this wasn't the end, but the beginning of something new. Something unexpected. And somewhere in the distance, he imagined Zenara smiling. With the ceasefire holding tenuously, Ronan found himself summoned to a hastily arranged meeting aboard Zenara's flagship. The interior of her vessel was as awe-inspiring as she was, filled with glowing crystalline structures that pulsed gently in time with the hum of advanced machinery. Everything about the ship exuded sophistication and power, yet there was an underlying elegance that made it feel less like a war machine and more like a sanctuary. Zenara greeted him personally at the entrance, her presence commanding yet oddly welcoming. Her bioluminescent tendrils shimmered with a soft, inviting glow, reflecting what Ronan interpreted as cautious optimism. "Captain Drake," she said, inclining her head slightly in acknowledgement. "I trust you are unharmed." He nodded, managing a small smile despite the gravity of the situation. "Thanks to you, yes. Though I suspect my superiors won't be thrilled about the outcome." Her mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. Leaders rarely appreciate being bested, especially by those they deem inferior. "But tell me, human, what drives you to pursue peace so fervently? Surely, it cannot merely be altruism." Ronan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It's complicated," he admitted. "Growing up on Earth, I saw how fear and misunderstanding led to unnecessary suffering. People lashed out at what they didn't understand, often causing more harm than good. I joined the IDC hoping to change that, to show others that coexistence is possible, even with those who seem vastly different." Zenara regarded him thoughtfully, her multifaceted eyes narrowing slightly. "Coexistence," she repeated, rolling the word around as though tasting it. "A noble ideal, perhaps. But ideals rarely survive contact with reality. Tell me, Captain, how do you propose we bridge the chasm between our peoples when centuries of animosity stand in the way?" Before Ronan could answer, the door slid open, revealing Commander Vega accompanied by several high-ranking officers. Their expressions ranged from guarded suspicion to outright hostility, but none dared to speak until Zenara addressed them directly. "Welcome," she said coolly, extending a clawed hand in a gesture of greeting. "Let us dispense with formalities. You are here because you wish to avoid further bloodshed." "Correct." Vega stepped forward, her posture rigid but controlled. "We're here because your demonstration left us little choice. But make no mistake, Queen Zenara, this truce is temporary. Any sign of betrayal, and we will retaliate with everything we have." To Ronan's relief, Zenara didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she inclined her head gracefully. "Understood. Let us begin negotiations, then. My terms are simple: withdrawal of all human forces from Zytherion and recognition of Velari sovereignty. In return, I offer assurances of non-aggression and potential trade agreements. The room erupted into murmurs as Vega conferred quietly with her advisors. Ronan watched anxiously, knowing full well how precarious this moment was. One misstep, one ill-chosen word, and the fragile peace could shatter irreparably. Finally, Vega turned back to Zanara, her expression grim but resolute. Withdrawal is acceptable, provided you agree to regular inspections to ensure compliance. As for trade, we'll discuss specifics once trust has been established. Zanara's tendrils flared briefly, signaling irritation, but she kept her tone measured. Inspections imply distrust. Are you incapable of believing my word, Commander? It's not personal, Vega retorted sharply. It's practical. Trust must be earned, not assumed. A tense silence followed, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Ronan felt sweat trickle down his spine, acutely aware of the stakes. This wasn't just about ending a battle, it was about rewriting history, forging a path forward where none existed before. After what felt like an eternity, Zanara sighed, a sound both regal and weary. Very well. Inspections shall be permitted, within reasonable limits. Now, let us address the matter of reparations for damages inflicted upon my people. Thus began hours of grueling negotiation, each side pushing and pulling, testing boundaries while striving to find common ground. Through it all, Ronan remained a silent observer, occasionally interjecting to clarify points or mediate disputes. It was exhausting work, but also exhilarating. For the first time in his career, he felt truly hopeful that peace might prevail. Yet, as the discussions wore on, cracks began to form beneath the surface. Some of Vega's officers grew increasingly agitated, muttering about concessions being too generous. Others openly questioned why they should bother negotiating with monsters at all. Even Zanara's advisors weren't immune, their whispers growing louder as frustration mounted. At one particularly heated juncture, a young lieutenant named Corbin slammed his fist onto the table, startling everyone. "Enough of this charade," he spat, glaring at Zanara. "You're nothing but a glorified insect playing at diplomacy. We should crush you and be done with it." The room fell deathly silent. All eyes turned to Zanara, waiting for her reaction. For a moment, she simply stared at Corbin, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a deep, resonant chuckle that echoed throughout the chamber. "Ah, Lieutenant," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "How quaintly predictable. Fear masked as bravado. Tell me, does insulting your opponent make you feel braver? Or merely foolish?" Corbin flushed crimson, stammering incoherently as Vega silenced him with a sharp glare. Ronan suppressed a grin, impressed by Zanara's deft handling of the situation. She wasn't just a queen, she was a master tactician, capable of diffusing tension with wit and charm. As the session drew to a close, tentative agreements were reached, though both sides remained wary. Before departing, Vega extended a curt nod to Zanara. "This is far from over," she warned. "But for now, we'll abide by these terms." Zanara returned the gesture, her expression unreadable. "Until next time, Commander. May your journey home be swift and safe." Once the humans had departed, Zanara turned to Ronan, her demeanor softening noticeably. "You played your part well today, Captain. Few of your kind possess such conviction." He shrugged modestly, though pride warmed his chest. "Just doing what I believe is right. Though I suspect this is only the beginning of a long process." Her tendrils shimmered brightly, signaling agreement. "Indeed. But beginnings are always fraught with uncertainty. What matters is how we navigate them." As they parted ways, Ronan couldn't shake the feeling that their paths would cross again soon, and that when they did, the stakes would be higher than ever. In the days following the tense negotiations, an uneasy calm settled over Zytherion. The human fleet withdrew to a safe distance, their ships hovering like specters in orbit while repair crews worked tirelessly to mend the damage inflicted during the skirmish. Back on the surface, Ronan found himself caught between two worlds, his loyalty to the IDC pulling him one way, and his growing respect for Zanara tugging him another. It was a precarious balance, one that left him questioning everything he thought he knew about duty, honor, and even himself. Zanara, too, seemed affected by the encounter. Though outwardly composed, those closest to her noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. Her advisors whispered among themselves, speculating whether the human captain had somehow influenced her decisions. Some accused her of weakness, claiming she'd allowed sentimentality to cloud her judgment. Others argued that diplomacy was a sign of strength, not frailty, a bold move designed to secure long-term stability for her people. Despite the murmurs of dissent, Zanara pressed forward with implementing the terms of the truce. Trade routes were reopened cautiously, allowing limited exchanges of resources between the Velari and select human outposts. Inspections proceeded as agreed, though both sides approached them with thinly veiled suspicion. Yet amidst the tension, small moments of connection began to emerge. A Velari engineer shared tips on energy efficiency with a curious human technician. A group of soldiers exchanged stories around a campfire, laughing at cultural misunderstandings. These interactions were fleeting, fragile, but they hinted at the possibility of something greater. Ronan spent much of his time shuttling between the human command center and Zanara's stronghold, serving as an unofficial liaison. Each visit deepened his understanding of the Velari culture, and of Zanara herself. She was far more than the fearsome queen depicted in military briefings. Beneath her regal exterior lay a being burdened by responsibility, driven by a desire to protect her people while grappling with doubts about her own leadership. They often spoke late into the night, discussing everything from philosophy to personal histories. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a bond formed between them, one built on mutual respect and shared vulnerability. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of indigo and gold, Zanara invited Ronan to join her atop a towering spire overlooking the planet's shimmering landscape. The view was breathtaking, a panorama of jagged cliffs and crystalline formations bathed in soft, otherworldly light. For a moment, neither spoke, content simply to take in the beauty of their surroundings. "You know," Zanara said finally, breaking the silence, "I once believed humans incapable of nuance. Your kind struck me as reckless, impulsive, consumed by emotion rather than reason." Ronan chuckled softly. "And now?" "Now?" She hesitated, her multifaceted eyes flickering with uncertainty. "Now I find myself wondering if perhaps we are not so different after all. Both our species fight for survival, guided by instincts that sometimes lead us astray. Perhaps it is not our differences that divide us, but our refusal to see beyond them." Her words resonated deeply with Ronan, stirring memories of his own struggles to reconcile ideals with reality. "It's funny," he mused. "Back home, people used to call me naive for believing peace was possible. But seeing you, the way you've handled this situation, it makes me think maybe I wasn't so wrong after all." Zanara turned to face him, her expression unreadable yet strangely tender. "Do you truly believe that, Captain? Or is it merely wishful thinking?" "I believe it because I've seen it," he replied firmly. "Not just in your actions, but in the little things, the gestures of goodwill, the willingness to listen. Those are the seeds of change, Zanara. If nurtured, they can grow into something extraordinary." For a moment, she simply stared at him, her bioluminescent tendrils glowing softly. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out, her clawed hand brushing against his cheek in a gesture that was both alien and achingly intimate. "You are unlike any human I have ever encountered, Ronan Drake. Perhaps there is hope for us yet." The warmth of her touch lingered long after she withdrew, leaving Ronan momentarily speechless. He wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the gap between them, but words failed him. Instead, he simply nodded, hoping she could read the sincerity in his eyes. Their quiet moment was shattered abruptly when alarms blared across the stronghold. Red lights flashed ominously, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Zanara straightened instantly, her demeanor shifting from contemplative to commanding in an instant. "Stay here," she ordered sharply before disappearing down the spiral staircase leading back inside. But Ronan couldn't obey. His instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. Descending quickly, he followed the sound of hurried footsteps until he reached the main control room. There, chaos reigned supreme. Technicians scrambled to decipher incoming data streams, while armed guards took up defensive positions. At the center of it all stood Zenara, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. "What is the threat?" she demanded, her tone icy. "A rogue faction within the syndicate has launched an assault on the inspection teams," one of her advisors reported grimly. "They're targeting both human and Velari forces, attempting to sabotage the truce." Ronan's heart sank. This was exactly what he'd feared, a splinter group determined to derail peace efforts for their own gain. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "We need to respond immediately. If we don't act, this could escalate into full-scale war." Zenara glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "And what would you suggest, Captain? Should I send my warriors to defend your people, knowing they may die in the process?" "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "Because if we let fear dictate our actions, then we've already lost." Her mandibles twitched, betraying a flicker of admiration, or perhaps something deeper. After a long pause, she issued rapid-fire orders to her commanders, mobilizing a contingent of elite Velari troops. Turning back to Ronan, she added, "You will accompany them. Ensure that your people understand this is not an attack, but an intervention." He nodded, gratitude swelling in his chest. Together, they raced toward the conflict zone, where smoke billowed into the sky and the acrid stench of burning metal filled the air. Human and Velari forces alike were pinned down, caught in a deadly crossfire orchestrated by shadowy figures cloaked in black armor. Identifying friend from foe proved nearly impossible, forcing Ronan and Zenara's combined team to rely on intuition and split-second decisions. As they fought side by side, Ronan marveled at Zenara's prowess in combat. Her movements were fluid and precise, each strike calculated to incapacitate rather than kill. Despite the chaos surrounding them, she remained focused, her presence inspiring those around her to push harder, fight smarter. When a stray blast narrowly missed her, Ronan instinctively lunged forward, shielding her with his body. "Are you mad?" she hissed, shoving him aside. "You cannot risk yourself for me." "And you can't risk yourself for me either," he shot back, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We're in this together, remember?" Their argument was cut short as reinforcements arrived, turning the tide of battle. The rogue faction, realizing they were outnumbered, began retreating into the dense forest surrounding the area. Ronan moved to pursue, but Zenara grabbed his arm, halting him mid-step. "Let them go," she said firmly. Chasing them now would only prolong the violence. "Besides," she gestured toward the wounded lying scattered across the battlefield, "there are others who need us more." Reluctantly, Ronan acquiesced, helping organize rescue efforts alongside Zenara. As medics tended to the injured and engineers assessed structural damage, a sense of camaraderie emerged among the survivors. Barriers once thought insurmountable crumbled under the weight of shared suffering and resilience. Later, as the dust settled and the stars emerged overhead, Ronan found himself sitting beside Zenara once again. This time, however, the mood was somber, tinged with exhaustion and grief. Neither spoke, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Zenara broke the silence. "I underestimated you, Ronan Drake," she admitted quietly. "You possess a courage few can claim, not the kind born of recklessness, but of conviction. Tell me, why do you continue to put yourself in harm's way for beings you barely know?" He considered her question carefully before answering. "Because I believe everyone deserves a chance to prove they're more than the worst thing they've ever done. Including you." Her tendrils shimmered faintly, signaling emotion he couldn't quite decipher. "Even if proving it means risking everything?" "Especially then," he replied with a wry smile. "Sometimes, taking a leap of faith is the only way to build a bridge." Zenara regarded him silently for a long moment, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the starlight above. Then softly she said, "Perhaps, Captain, you are right. Perhaps bridges are worth building, even if they tremble beneath our feet." As they sat together under the vast expanse of the cosmos, the future remained uncertain. Challenges loomed large, threats still lingered, and trust was a fragile thing easily broken. Yet amidst the uncertainty, there was hope, a spark ignited by two unlikely allies who dared to imagine a world beyond war. And though the road ahead promised to be fraught with peril, Ronan and Zanara faced it together, bound by a shared vision of coexistence that transcended species, borders, and even time itself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity as both human and Velari forces worked tirelessly to stabilize the situation on Zytherion. The rogue faction's attack had left scars, not just physical ones, but emotional wounds that ran deep. Trust, already fragile, threatened to shatter completely. Yet, against all odds, Ronan and Zanara stood firm in their resolve to see peace through. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, forged not only in moments of crisis but also in quiet conversations held under the planet's shimmering twilight skies. They shared stories of their pasts. Ronan spoke of his childhood by the sea, where he learned humility from the tides, while Zanara recounted tales of her ascension to the throne, a journey fraught with sacrifice and self-doubt. These exchanges revealed layers of vulnerability beneath their outward strength, drawing them closer than either had anticipated. But progress wasn't without its challenges. Backlash from both sides mounted as factions within the human fleet and the Velari Council questioned the wisdom of cooperation. Some accused Ronan of treason, claiming he'd grown too sympathetic to the enemy. Others whispered that Zanara was being manipulated, her decisions swayed by sentiment rather than strategy. Despite the criticism, neither wavered. Instead, they leaned on each other, finding solace in their shared determination to defy cynicism and fear. One evening, as they walked along the crystalline cliffs overlooking the ocean-like expanse below, Zanara paused, turning to face Ronan with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Do you ever wonder," she began hesitantly, "if what we're doing is futile? If the universe is simply too vast, too broken, for beings like us to mend?" Ronan smiled softly, reaching out to place a hand on her shoulder. "I used to wonder that a lot. But then I realized something. It doesn't matter if the universe is broken. What matters is whether we try to fix it." Her bioluminescent tendrils flared faintly, signaling a mix of emotions Ronan had come to recognize as admiration and affection. "You are remarkable, Ronan Drake. Perhaps you've changed me more than I care to admit." Before he could respond, movement in the distance caught their attention. A delegation of humans approached, led by Commander Vega, who looked unusually subdued. Behind her trailed several high-ranking officers, their faces etched with seriousness. Ronan tensed instinctively, fearing the worst. Had they come to revoke the truce? To arrest him? Zanara stepped forward, her regal bearing masking any hint of apprehension. "Commander Vega," she greeted evenly. "To what do we owe this visit?" Vega inclined her head respectfully, a gesture Ronan hadn't seen her make before. "Queen Zanara," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "We've received intelligence confirming that the rogue faction responsible for the recent attacks has been neutralized. Their leaders have surrendered, citing your combined efforts as proof that continued resistance is futile." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the gathered crowd, though Zanara remained composed. "And what of your intentions now, Commander?" she asked pointedly. "Will you honor our agreement, or will you use this victory as justification to reclaim lost ground?" Vega hesitated, glancing briefly at Ronan before meeting Zanara's gaze directly. "Our intentions remain unchanged, for now. However," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "I must confess, Queen Zanara, that Captain Drake has made a compelling case for coexistence. While I cannot speak for everyone, I believe there is merit in exploring further collaboration." It was a small concession, but one laden with significance. Ronan felt a surge of pride and relief as Zanara nodded graciously. "Then let us build upon this foundation," she said, extending a clawed hand in a gesture of goodwill. "Together, we may yet create something extraordinary." As Vega accepted the handshake, a murmur of approval spread among those present. For the first time in what felt like ages, hope seemed tangible, a living thing that pulsed in the air around them. The ceremony concluded with promises of renewed trade agreements, joint research initiatives, and cultural exchange programs designed to foster understanding between the two species. In the weeks that followed, life on Zytherion transformed. Humans and Velari worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources in ways previously unimaginable. Schools hosted intercultural events, artists collaborated on projects blending human creativity with Velari precision, and children played together without prejudice. Even skeptics found themselves won over by the undeniable benefits of cooperation. For Ronan and Zanara, the changes brought personal fulfillment as well. No longer constrained by duty alone, they allowed their relationship to evolve into something deeper. Though their differences were vast, they discovered that love transcended biology and tradition. Their connection became a symbol of unity, inspiring others to embrace diversity rather than fear it. The turning point came during a grand celebration marking the one-year anniversary of the truce. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Zytherion to witness the unveiling of a monument dedicated to peace, a towering sculpture depicting intertwined human and Velari forms, crafted from materials native to both worlds. As fireworks illuminated the night sky and music filled the air, Ronan stood beside Zanara, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Look at them," she murmured, gesturing toward the jubilant crowd. "Do you see how far we've come?" He nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "We did it, Zanara. Against all odds, we built a bridge, and it's holding." Her tendrils shimmered brightly, reflecting the joy radiating from within. "No, Ronan. You did it. You showed me, and everyone else, that even monsters can dream of peace." At her words, Ronan laughed, pulling her into an embrace. "If we're monsters, then let's be the best kind, the ones who dare to change the world." As they stood together beneath the stars, surrounded by laughter and light, it was clear that their journey was far from over. Challenges would arise, misunderstandings would flare, and sacrifices would need to be made. But none of that mattered in that moment. What mattered was the promise of tomorrow, a future shaped not by fear or hatred, but by courage, compassion, and an unshakable belief in the power of unity. And so, under the watchful eyes of the cosmos, Ronan Drake and Queen Zanara wrote a new chapter in the story of their peoples, one defined not by conflict, but by hope. Together, they proved that even the most unlikely alliances could blossom into something beautiful, lighting the way for generations to come.